Hi, good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's edition of the TD Show. My name is Chris Brad, FIDE Events Manager for US Chess. And tonight we are exceedingly grateful to be joined by National Tournament Director and FIDE Arbiter, Mike Hoffpauir. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing just fine. Glad to be here.
Wonderful. Looks like you're in space, Mike. You're visiting.
Yeah, I'm celebrating the rocket launch successfully this morning, the mission to Mars.
Okay. All right. And then, Mike, you're also a US Chess Executive Board member. How long have you been on the board?
I'm starting my 5th year pretty shortly.
Wow. Grueling. You having fun with it?
Yeah, actually, I enjoy contributing and trying to bring forward as many member issues as I can.
Fantastic. All right, so let's, Mike, just before we get into the meat of our presentation tonight on player conduct, I'd like to talk a little bit about, you've been part of a task force dealing with online play, and I'd like to bring people's attention to a town hall meeting that you guys held the other day, which we have a video on the US Chess YouTube channel that goes over, I think it's like an hour and a half long, but it covers the various new aspects of the new Chapter 10, which relates to online play. So these are hopefully going to be the new rules about online play. What can you tell us about this briefly, Mike?
Yeah, back in February and March, I started a dialogue with Ken Ballou in the Rules Committee and quickly came to the conclusion that the existing Chapter 10 in the rule book, which is guidelines, was sorely out of date, not just from a date perspective, but also from a content perspective, because it didn't recognize technology status today and the capabilities that are present on online platforms and so forth. And it was really kind of written, it had last been updated in 2014, but Tim said it was written, a while before that.
Right.
So I stayed up literally like 9 hours one night and drafted an entire replacement for Chapter 10 and sent that to Ken, and the Rules Committee chopped on it for US Chess and, played around with it. And then in the executive board, I highlighted the problem and said, we need to form a special committee or task force or something and try to get a product ready to the delegates so that we can have a new Chapter 10 put into the rule book after the delegates meeting coming up in about 3 weeks.
Right. So this is pretty in depth. I know you go into a lot of the online stuff, and basically, I mean, the main suggestion I get out of this is that the online stuff is still sort of, even though it's using the online ratings, not regular over the board ratings, but you still want it to be taken seriously. You're asking. We see on this little slide here about TDs physically present in all locations, and if that can't happen, then there's various variations. So it looks good. How quickly are we hoping to get this implemented?
Oh, really, if the delegates vote for it and there's not many, if there's just minor changes to wording and stuff like that, I think we'll have it up and running before the 1st of September. Tim Just, who's the official editor for the rule book, as most of you know, Tim's already got a copy of the Word document and has reformatted it so that it looks like the other documents, and so it would be put online alongside chapters 1, 2, and 11 that are online today for us to look at.
Fantastic.
There isn't a plan right now to just go ahead and reprint the rule book because there's a new Chapter 10 in there.
Right.
But that's not my decision. That's a decision that the executive director, Carol Meyer, makes.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think it's fantastic that we're putting it all online. So tournament directors, if you're out there, definitely check out this video. If you're running online events, for sure, check it out. There's a lot of useful information, a lot of good stuff coming down the line. And if you want to give feedback, there's some information about emailing. I think it's Ryan Velez that was collecting feedback from the meeting. So feel free to look through that and watch it. Of course, after the TD show, I put the link in the chat, so bookmark it. And then, check it all out. And then just while we're talking about online stuff, of course, the exciting news that's hitting the world right now is the US Chess Chess Life cover for August. hitting all the top streamers. I guess it's about the PogChamps event, but a lot of exciting stuff happening in the Twitch, YouTube world of online streaming for chess. It really is a hot ticket right now to get into this world. Of course, you won't see the regular contributor to the US Chess Twitch channel in the photograph anywhere, but that's okay. Maybe we'll make the next one if we get enough viewers each week tuning into these shows. So I'm holding out hope. Eventually, we'll get someone on there. But for now, when you get this in your mailbox, obviously check out the cover. It's fantastic, and I hear the story from Eric Rosen is great too. Yes, and as Enrique Huerta is telling me in the chat, I was robbed. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, I see Eric put himself front and center in the
yeah, it's okay. So anyway, so we just wanted to mention that it is hot news in the chess world right now. As you can see, Hikaru's tweet here has gathered over 8,000 likes, and I think one of the streamers' tweets got over 24,000 likes. It's amazing what's going on in the world. Anywho, let's get back to today's presentation. So we've got Mike here for a reason. He's a national tournament director, very experienced one too. Mike is here to talk to us about player conduct. Mike, so let's get on with the presentation. Mike, is there any particular reason we have Loki appearing here on this first slide? Is
yeah,
Loki...
he's a badass, and you have some badasses at the tournaments, as directors all know.
Right.
So
so next time I'm at an event, I should go dressed up as Thor and swing like a hammer around or something. Is that what you're
exactly? Yeah.
Yes, I'm sure you're all waiting for Over the Board Chess to get going so that you can see that in action. But anyway, so US Chess Rulebook Section 20 is all about conduct of players and spectators. If you want to find out about spectator conduct, we did the TD show a few weeks ago, so check out the archive on the US Chess YouTube channel for that presentation too. So let's get into the actual rules that relate to player conduct, specifically in line with behavior of the players. So this is the first part of a two-part show, basically. Mike is going to cover player behavior, and then next week we will have another guest talking to us about some other things to do with player conduct, more to do with cheating, use of assistants, and things like that. But this is really the behavior of the players. So 20A is the first rule that relates to everything about conduct of players.
And it's the first thing I want to note is what we're going to see pretty soon, and we're actually already starting to see it, is players cheating in online events. So it's not limited to just over the board with somebody going to the bathroom and looking up their things in their cell phone, or having secret codes and Morse codes to telegraph moves to people. It's going on in the online world too. And I talked with David Hayter, who's run several online tournaments in his role with working for Bill Goichberg's outfit.
Yep.
And David says that, they've had one in every event, at least one in every event so far that he's been a part of, and I think it's 6 or 8 of them.
Right.
Except one tournament. It was a senior tournament, and he said that's because the seniors don't know how to cheat with computers. And I told him, I said I would disagree with that comment, take offense to it. Take offense to it. But he was shocked to learn and to see that the vast majority of the cheaters are all kids, like 13 years and under.
Yeah.
So it's really kind of a sad state of affairs that the kids just think they can. Oh well, I'm just going to use my computer.
Right.
So,
yeah,
but from the standpoint of ethics, there's really no difference. Cheating is cheating, whether it's online or not.
Right.
And one of the things covered in the new chapter 10 is how to address cheating online through the ethics process, because it's not you don't just write a note to the ethics committee, said, hey, I believe that so and so and so and so named this guy named Chris Berg cheated in a game in a tournament, you can go look game results. They're posted on on chess.com or ICC or whatever, and then you can see that he was cheating. The ethics committee work like that. They work with the ethics, with the information and evidence that the tournament director or the offended player puts forward, period. They're not going to go on a witch hunt and investigate for people. It doesn't work like that. But I think that there's really no difference. Cheating is cheating.
Right. And everyone who signs up to play in all these events abides by 20A. So players, have to participate in a spirit of fair play and good sportsmanship. And everybody is under the US Chess Code of Ethics rules. So, anyone who signs up to play in a US Chess Reading event, it meets with these rules as well. So let's.
And many of you are going to find when you renew your memberships, you have to actually acknowledge that you've read and understand the rules of chess and the of ethics.
Yep.
So some annoying behavior. This is probably the one that plagues most directors at a tournament, and it's the kid who's running around like a rabbit and absolutely won't sit down. It's another opponent and just looking at them. It's the player who's got a candy wrapper made of foil and it's making all kind of racket, and you can hear it across the room. So the point is that there are hundreds of ways that annoying behavior comes up, and it initially is in the mind of whoever perceives the annoying behavior. Because a lot of times players' annoying behavior is completely unintentional. They didn't even know they were annoying somebody. And then when you tell them, they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know," But there's some that say a few other choice words too. That's why I call them Lokis. But all right, let's go to the next slide.
Yep.
So you get inadvertent annoying behavior. The one that always gets me, and I if I run tournaments, there's at least one of these where it's, I call them body odor Bobby, where it's just the player just smells like he or she hasn't had a bath in forever. And generally when those happen, one of the players is going to complain. And I've had to tell players before, don't you show up for the next round without going to take a shower somewhere. And then they'll say, well, I'm not staying in a hotel, so here's my key. Go take a shower. So, it's not at all uncommon to have, these kinds of inadvertent or somewhat unintentional, because the player's not doing it deliberately. They just don't have good personal hygiene.
It's just them, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Never had to go as far as assigning a player in another room because the player smelled so bad, but I do know directors who have done that.
Okay. Yeah, I've never had to do that. Well, not for that reason. I've assigned a player to another room for other reasons, but not because of not because of that. But yeah. And then the TD tip that accompanies all this.
Yeah, the key is when player A perceives that he or she is being, offended or aggrieved by player B, it's the director who decides. Because otherwise you'll have players raising their hand for any kind of annoying behavior you can think of. And, we'll play around with some of that in our favorite, trivia questions at the end. But really, it's the director who decides. And it's common sense. It's just common sense. And you have to, as a director, you have to apply that common sense and do what's right for the good of the tournament and the good, the good of the fair play and good and discipline of the tournament.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. There are, even TDs themselves will have a certain, different thresholds of what they consider annoying and what they don't. So players might get different, answer from tournament to tournament, which is not great. But yeah, it is the director that decides, in the end, what can be determined as annoying and what isn't. So there's a question in the chat, Mike, that's from Enrique Huerta that says, when we go back to chess, in the COVID world, will coughing be dealt with differently?
It probably will be perceived differently for a while. But I think, where it will be dealt differently is by applying whatever local standards and so forth are called for in that local area. Because I know when I ran our Virginia State Championship for the kids back about, matter of fact, it was a week before the COVID crisis really blossomed. It was already news, but it wasn't restricting movement and activities yet. Mm-hmm. But there, we had put protocols in place that if a kid was coughing, I had an emergency medical technician that the kid would get sent to. If the TD felt or a player was complaining that somebody's coughing too much. So that's how I think we have to deal with those kinds of things.
Right. So the next issue
if Kiki starts coughing, I know it's not COVID. Okay. So long absence during play, it happens. I've seen it lots of times in tournaments, and usually it's when somebody is in a long in a losing position. Is the most common occurrence I've seen. But I have seen instances where, and we'll have a trivia question about it, but instances where, the opponent complains and my opponent keeps leaving the room. And then where do they go? Well, they're going to the bathroom, or they're going out the back door of the venue, or they're going over to this other section and talking to somebody. But that's what I see is those are the very common complaints I hear in tournaments.
Right. Yeah, I know that usually when I get this such complaint, I sort of, my watch personally starts from the moment that I'm aware that they're missing, not if the player tells me, well, they've already been gone 10 minutes. I sort of take that into account, but I start my 15 minutes from sort of from that point, which I sort of give them the benefit of the doubt. But if they're still missing 15 minutes later from when I found out about it, then then obviously you've got a bit of an issue.
Yeah, that's a good best practice, because I usually carry a couple of 3x5 cards around in my pocket, and then I'll write down board 27 black, and I'll put a time next to it. That way I know when I'm kind of starting to watch on somebody.
Exactly. All right, and then we get to the favorite one that you were mentioning previously.
So this is pretty common, where you get this case where the player's been beaten and probably embarrassed by how poorly that they played, but they were going to try to exact some kind of revenge on the opponent that just destroyed them. And the way they do it is they leave the board, but they usually will leave their equipment there. Mm-hmm. So you don't know the player's resigned. And they just leave the room. They'll be out in the hall looking at the wall charts, or, over in another section watching games. I mean, I had a quick war story for you, a TD story. I was TDing at one of the Scholastic Nationals, and I saw a player sitting at his board just kind of looking all over the place. And I didn't see an opponent there. So I just made note of it. And then 5 minutes later, the kid's still looking around. So I went over and I said, "Where's your opponent?" He says, "I don't know. I haven't seen him for a while." So I wrote the time down. And about 10 minutes later, the kid came back and got me. "Hey, he's over there." He pointed to the kid was over in another section. And so I went and looked at the board, and it was just like I described here. It's mate and one no matter what you do. I mean, you're going to get mated on the next move, and he was going to get hit with a back rank mate, and there was no way he could stop it. Mm-hmm. And so I went over and told the other player, I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, I'm just looking at other games." I said, "It's your turn at your board, and I think it's kind of unsportsmanlike, given the position that you're in, for you to be doing this. I think you should go sit down at your board and finish game." So the kid kind of shook his head, went and sat down at his board, and sat there for like 10 minutes, and then got up and started walking around again. And as soon as he got up and started walking around, I asked him, I said, "Where are you going?" He says, "Well, my coach has told me that I should think about my move before I make it." I said, "Well, I don't know how much you're thinking," because and this kid was rated like 1,600. I said, "I'm rated lower than you, and I know you have only one move on the board, and you lose on the next move. So your game is done. Beat feet, go pack up your stuff and get out of here."
Right.
So, I mean, it was just complete unsportsmanlike behavior. And of course, I had to confront the father with Frank Guadalupe about 20 minutes later, and told the father that his kid was behaving unsportsmanlike. And after I got, hey, my children go to Christian churches and we don't behave that way, I said, well, I'm sorry to tell you, your son was behaving like that at the board today,
Right.
But it happens.
Yeah. Now, what do you do in the situation where the kid is, the same situation, but the kid is just sat there thinking and thinking and thinking, and he still only has one move, but he stays at the board? I mean, in my view, that's okay. But
yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I don't do anything there.
Right.
And even if the opponent complains, I would say, I'm sorry, he has the right to sit there and think.
Yeah.
Now I have seen TDs that after like a half hour or something will go and say, what's going on here,
Right.
and to try to get the round finish on time kind of stuff.
Yeah. And another thing that was pointed out by Karen Pennick via Kiki in the chat was that sometimes you get these situations. Sometimes the kid is a little scared to actually lose a game and go out and face their parent or their coach, and I know I've definitely had to just talk someone into.
It's easier to tell the parents that I lost on time.
Right. Yeah.
Instead, all I had left was king, and I was getting crushed.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's not really my scene consoling some of these scholastic players, but I've had to do it from time to time. So anyway, let's move on. And another favorite part that we all like to hear of, Mike.
Yeah, this is one I have not really experienced that many times in my career, but I know it happens because of what other TDs tell me. So a typical situation is like I lay out there. A spectator comes up to the tournament director and says, "Hey, I heard these two people talking out in the lobby, and I think one of them is a grandmaster, and I heard one of them tell the other one, 'Hey, I depart early. Let's just take a draw.'" That's fixing a game. And yeah, the two guys were on board too in this example that I give here, and they're good friends. But it doesn't matter. It's fixing a game. So the real point becomes, everybody knows these guys are good friends, but what are you going to do about it? Well, from my perspective, the friendship is not really an issue here. What's an issue is I have two players conspiring to fix a result, and that's a violation of rules of fair play. So if the individual scheduled his plane too early, then that's a lick on them, or wanted to go visit somebody before they flew out of town. That's just too bad. So this is the kind of thing where I would look seriously and really seriously about some kind of discipline against the two players. Now I would probably start, especially if they play in my tournaments a lot, I would most likely start, if you do it again, I'm gonna throw you out of the tournament.
Right.
Or I'll take a half a point off your score or something like that. This is just, it's really unacceptable behavior.
I think in most cases, though, invariably you would never get to hear about this. You would just see a draw marked up on the result sheet, and you'd probably be none the wiser, right, as to them taking a quick draw. Up for as far as you're concerned, unless you know otherwise. They've sat down and played, their grandmaster draw or whatever, and agreed to a draw, and then that's it.
Right.
So, but definitely. I mean, if you're aware that they've agreed to it, especially before they start or anything like that. I think I've even heard of a situation where we've had players not even set up a board in a set and just agree to a draw without actually playing any moves, and we forced them to actually go back and play a game. I call it a game. I mean, a few moves at least to make it legitimate. At least we can submit it for rating at that point or whatever. But
exactly.
It's definitely an area to be careful on, because you could definitely get a legitimate quick draw in the last round for sure. Mm-hmm. But last round, and then I've had I know of at least, and Enrique Weta can maybe talk to this at National Open. I think a couple of years ago there was a situation where there were actually there was a collusion for a certain result. I think in the last round, so that ended up going all the way to an ethics complaint, I believe. So that is seriously against the rules to do that.
Okay.
Penalties. What can we do if players violate any of these rules?
Well, the way I look at it is I've got a quiver with a bunch of arrows in it. And I can start with warnings and go all the way through expelling a player from a tournament. If I'm the chief tournament director, if I'm just a floor TD, I'm not going to be throwing somebody out of a tournament. But that would be the chief TD doing that. But I've got this full of these arrows that I can use, and based on what the offense is, some things players do, it has automatic penalty. There is no warning that you give.
Mm-hmm.
But others, especially where annoying behavior is concerned, a warning is usually the right kind of a thing to start with, unless it's just really, really egregious and you jump right away to something much more serious, like a cell phone going off, kind of thing. And if the player's not supposed to have a cell phone, then that annoying behavior lost the game for them.
Right.
But if you've got a rule that says cell phones can be in your backpack and turned off, and one of them goes off, that might be the 15 or 30-minute penalty, depending on what you put in your pre-tournament publicity, for the offense.
Yep.
So.
Yep. So you have a complete arsenal of all sorts of penalties that you can assign, all the way from a warning right to loss of game and kicking people out of the tournament. So.
Right.
Yep.
And I've even gone one step further than that. Just say, I'm not letting you play in any of my tournaments for the next year.
Right.
Where something's been really, really bad. I mean, I had a father whose kid, I told him, don't bring the kid to any more tournaments this school year. Because the kid was just being really obnoxious and stuff, and all the warnings and throwing him out of one tournament the weekend before, none of that was working. So we told him, just don't come back this year.
Right.
So.
And I missed this question in the chat. So there was a question about national scholastic events. It says we, the floor TDs, have to have agreement from both of the players and have them sign the result sheet. What is to be done when a player refuses to acknowledge the correct result?
It's not like there's nothing wrong with it. That's where the TD just writes in the place where the person was going to sign. It just says player refused to sign.
Right. I think
it's clear. You're looking at the board who the game.
Yeah.
But if the players are arguing about the result, and you have players on either side that may know what the result was, and then you have the player who's saying, "No, I won," and then you can look at the score sheets and see what all's been done. But it happens all the time where, at the nationals where somebody refuses to sign, or even they both sign it, they just leave, and the score sheet's just sitting there, and there's nobody at the table.
I think I've had it where one kid has left without signing. Be that accidentally or deliberately, I don't know. So I will just take the result sheet and make a note on the back saying what happened. And blah, blah, blah.
Usually when that happens, when I'm a section chief, I'll tag one of the floor TDs that says, okay, when this kid comes next round, he's playing on board whatever. I want you to approach him while his parents are there and tell them that he forgot to sign his score sheet last round, and that please remember to sign the score sheet next round.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. And now, and then, of course, last one we get to.
Yeah, this can get serious. I mean, I've seen several ethics cases where manipulating results, in particular, manipulation of results leading up to a tournament that has a larger prize fund. So you get a player, or even sometimes a group of players, where it's very apparent that games were being thrown just to ensure that one or more players could qualify to play in a certain lower rated section of the tournament. That's sandbagging. That's deliberately losing games in order to put yourself into a position to get to better play in a lower section and to better compete for the prize. And at the same time, you get manipulation in the opposite direction, where a player either plays against people who have high ratings who are known not to even be playing actively anymore. There was a case in Virginia about 10 years ago like that, where a player had rigged some matches. Actually, they were quads. Had rigged some quads where he was winning against players rated, several hundred, 200-300 points higher than him on a consistent basis, and those players weren't even playing anymore. And the U.S. chess database doesn't have a way to catch that. So what actually happened is one of the offended players just happened to have looked at his chess rating online and saw that his chess rating had dropped. And he was like, I hadn't played in 5 years. How could it possibly drop? And then he looked and saw the results. I never played any of these events. And that's how we found out about it. And so we prosecuted the ethics case, and the guy was, barred from life, thrown out for life. And he had earned a national master certificate by doing that.
Right.
So that was taken away and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this meets with Enrique's example from the National Open that I was talking about. He said it was bribery, so I guess it was, and the opponent actually turned him in. The guy who was the opponent turned the guy who was trying to bribe him in and mentioned that. So kudos to him. But,
I know my son got offered when he was like in third grade. He got offered a bunch of Pokemon cards to let his opponent win. It's just real. And I said, well, did you take the cards? He said, no, I kind of looked at them, and there were some rare cards in there, but I decided to beat him. So.
That's great. All right. Trivia time, folks. That's everything we're covering for this week in terms of player conduct. Remember, tune in next week, player conduct. We're going to talk about things like cheating, solicited advice, various things along those lines. John Hartman is in the chat. You want to forfeit me. This is my punishment for not putting you on the cover. I did. In honestly, John, I did not deserve a space on the cover until we get at least 100 people tuning into the TD show every week. Don't put me on the cover. I set the bar low at 100, but in terms of TDs, that might be a really good bar. So, let's get on to the trivia. So, I'm sure you're all itching to type in your answers. So let me open the poll here. So you can answer in the chat by typing 1, 2, 3, or 4 in the chat. John playing white on board 4 against Bob gets up from the board and goes to a common area just outside the playing room where you overhear him start talking to someone about his most recent move. The other person only listens and does not say anything. What would you do? 1, John, he shouldn't be talking to anyone. 2, do the same as 1 but add 2 minutes to the opponent's clock. 3, 1, John, and deduct 2 minutes from John's clock, or would you just immediately start forfeiting John because he's talking about his game to somebody else? So we've got many votes in the chat right now. I think 5 votes in so far, and we are at we've got 6 votes in, 7 votes in, and everybody's going for number 1. We'll give it a couple more seconds here and get any more last votes. We're starting off simple, so we can have a vote for number 2. Okay, let me. I'm going to close the vote. So, what would you do, Mike, in this instance?
To me, I like number 1 better, also especially because the other player wasn't saying anything. But I also wouldn't have a problem with number 2, because the question I asked myself is, why were you talking about the move? What were you expecting to hear from the other player that you were talking to?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have a problem with number 2 at all either.
The only worry I have with number 2 is if you go back into the room and you add 2 minutes to the opponent's clock, he's going to start asking questions about what happened. Yeah, and you might open a bit of a can of worms, whereas there might not have been any. But definitely everything involves telling John not to do that in the future. So, and Enrique says the money's in the mill because he was the one that weren't voting for number 2. So anyway, let's get to question number 2. Oops, somebody voted on question number 2 already. So let me announce that the poll is open. 1, 2, 3, or 4. Go ahead and type your answer in the chat. We'll maybe try and discard that vote for number 1. So let's see. Johnny is an expert rated player who is habitually late for each round by a few minutes. At this point, you don't care because his clock is running. After the next round starts, a spectator tells you there's a guy in the hall playing chess on his computer. I think it's the player who is supposed to be on board 7. You check, and Johnny, who is always late for his game, of course, is playing board 7 as black. You send a floor TD outside in the hall, and he reports that Johnny is bucking up and using chess base. Johnny hasn't made a move, and the opponent has not made a claim, but is looking around the room, presumably for Johnny. How would you handle this one? So with 1, you'd forfeit Johnny on the spot. 2, do nothing. Johnny's clock is running, and he's playing an IM from China, who's probably going to whoop him anyway. 3, you find out if Johnny has been in the playing room and possibly seen White's opening move, then make a determination as to what to do. Or 4, you wait until after the round and talk to Johnny about his behavior. So 1, 2, 3, or 4. I know someone accidentally voted for 1 before we got to even see the question. But well done, Dr. Chess RX. It's okay. I see your replacement answer there. But it's nice to have a vote for number 1. I like hard hitting tournament directors. Hey, the round has started, and this guy is sat on a computer looking at moves. What else are you meant to do? So let's go ahead and close. So we got plenty of votes here, Mike, but the majority of the answers all went for 3. How would you handle this one?
That's the same way I would do it, because I like the spectator who reported him. That'd be the first person I asked, did you see him go in the room at all? Because if he went in the room, and I don't care if he went in the room, I don't care if he saw the board or not, because then he may have, and I can't tell whether he had. So I would be, that's it. Your game is over at that point. Or I, take a considerable amount of time off the person's clock.
Now, what if you're live streaming the game? So he could have picked it up off the internet, or it's like one of the top boards on a DGT.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this tournament was not being live streamed. That's a good point. But yeah, that's absolutely true. If the games are being live streamed, I don't care if the player even tells me he wasn't looking at them. It's too bad.
I mean, he could be sat in his hotel room and not show up for the first 15 minutes. But then, how do you know what he's been doing? Right? It's because he's doing it openly and blatantly that he's going to get caught bucking up.
Because what I would have, because I mean, this is actually a person who actually does this in some tournaments here in our local area, and we've told them don't do that. Right. Stay in your hotel room and do it. I don't care there, because I'm not broadcasting the games. Yep. But don't come and sit outside the tournament hall in a chair right outside the door, looking up your moves.
Right. So. All right, let's move on to question 3, and then I will go ahead and open the voting for 1, 2, 3, or 4. Question 3, you're a floor TD for a Game in 20 Delay 5 online event with all players playing from home. You've got the responsibility to observe games on board 20 through 49. For anyone who's counting, that's 30 players that you're observing at once in the under 2000 section. The players all have 2 cameras on them, one on their face.
It's 30 games. It's 30 games.
Right. 60 players then.
Yeah.
You're monitoring 60 players. Nice. You observe that one of the players, your very sharp-eyed TD, keeps looking towards his left, but you can't see anything on the room-wide camera the player has. He doesn't appear to be talking to anyone. What do you do? 1, contact the Chief TD and tell him that you recommend forfeiting the player for cheating. 2, contact the Chief TD and describe for him what you are observing. 3, use your own computer, fire up Stockfish, and start checking the player's moves against Stockfish's top moves. I'm sure you have time to do that. And 4, send a text message to the player's opponent, who you know. So inform the opponent what's going on. So was there anything that came up in the online task force about having audio on when you're viewing?
Oh yeah, I mean it's definitely one of the technologies that's available and should be used if possible. Because I know from doing this, I mean this is sort of the equivalent of being a floor TD for an online tournament. You get assigned a certain number of boards that you watch, and you just go from board to board to board on your screen in Zoom or whatever medium is being used. And you're just kind of looking, because you may better have 6, 8, 10 games up at a time.
Right.
And you can see what the players are doing, but you're looking for something that's suspicious.
Right.
And matter of fact, David Hayter said this is how they caught a kid in a tournament. Was that one of the floor TDs? I don't know if it was, I can't remember if David said it was himself or Steve Emmett, but they saw a player consistently looking over in one direction all the time.
Right.
And that caused them to say, hey, look, after these games are finished, let's run them through the algorithm and see what what it says. And so ICC's fair play algorithm confirmed that there was foul play going on.
Yep. All right. So any more votes, folks? I think we've got plenty of votes in here. Yeah, they could be watching baseball. They could be doing anything, but they really should be concentrating on the chess, I guess. So I'm going to go ahead and close the voting off. So no more votes, folks. I'm going to announce. So everyone voted for number 2.
Yeah. Before you go for the next one, let me talk for a second about this online piece. The biggest concern from everyone out there about online play is cheating. I mean, it's absolutely the single biggest concern. And US Chess has a program where I don't mean a software program. We have an initiative where we are working with vendors like ICC, Chess24, Chess.com, ChessSpace, whomever. But everybody who provides Chess, people that provide online play services, and asking to look at the hood at their algorithms and their procedures for detecting fair play violations.
Right.
And we've done that for Chess.com. Their letter of endorsement by US Chess is on the US Chess website. And we just finished doing it for ICC. And matter of fact, last night, I submitted the motion to the executive board to approve ICC's fair play method. And the people who do this and do the looking are members of the ratings committee. The PhD statisticians sign a non-disclosure agreement with that organization and then literally look under the hood at and ask all the questions that statisticians are going to ask about their play procedures. And the instructions that they were given was that we're not about comparing one company's algorithm and processes to another's. That's not the purpose. The purpose is simply decide whether in your expert opinion as a statistician, whether the procedures that are being applied by that particular organization have a very good probability of catching people, number one, and an extremely low probability of having false detections.
Right.
And these are not based on the results of one game by and large. They're usually based on a series of games. So that's how they get caught. People that cheat it's like an addiction. They just do it. Right. And even though they don't need to, they're going to do it anyway.
Yep. Get caught eventually.
Yeah. And so those fair play methods are being scrutinized by US Chess, and Chess.com is approved. It's the same one that supports ChessKid.com.
Yep.
And ICC's has been reviewed and approved by the ratings committee. It's been wording and language protecting players' rights has been approved by the ethics committee, and so now it's in front of the board. And I saw last time I had checked that 3 out of the 7 board members had voted to approve it without comment. So I expect it to be public within the next week or so at the most.
Yep. Sounds good. Great. And just for those interested, answer number 2 was the correct answer to this question, right? So yeah, definitely let the Chief TD know what's going on. One thing I'd like to say is why the person who else is watching this only got 20 boards dealing with boards 1 through 19. I would feel pretty, annoyed. I've got to deal with 60 players and they only have to deal with 40. That doesn't seem fair.
Hey. This guy was a senior TD, the other guy was a local, so
okay. More responsibility for the local, right? The local got more boards, right? Yes. They need more work to do. Yeah. Get more experience. Anyway, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let's you can type your answer. You are the chief now. There's some bigger responsibility. Chief of the under 1600 section. Almost 200 players. Wow. Joe, playing white on board 68, is paired against Sally in round 4 out of 6 rounds. Joe approaches you and says, Sally is wearing this low-cut dress and it's really a distraction. Can you do something about it? What would you do? This is maybe why someone keeps looking to the left. Anyway, 1, tell Joe to focus on his game because no one else has complained about it. 2, do everything in number 1, but also talk with one of the female tournament directors on the staff to seek her opinion about what to do. 3, stop the game and instruct Sally to put on a sweater or a jacket. Or 4, shake your head and ignore Joe's comment. Come on, man. So 1, 2, 3, or 4. Let's go, folks. And this might come up more often than you think, I guess.
It does.
In practice.
Usually they don't. Usually the guys don't complain though until after they lose their game.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So 1, 2, 3, or 4. So Sally is being a little provocative with what she's wearing, I guess, and Joe's complaining about it. I guess the question is, do you do anything about it? 1, 2, 3, or 4. Would you get a different answer from this if it was a male tournament director as opposed to a female tournament director? You shouldn't, but you might. Okay, any more answers, folks? I am going to close the poll off now. So, Mike, we got the majority of people. 6 out of 7 went for answer number 2, and 1 person went for answer number 4. What would you say?
I mean, I wouldn't have anything to say against number 4, but I do think I would talk to one of the female tournament directors and see what she recommends on how to handle the situation, because it might be appropriate to have the female tournament director go talk to her after the game and mention something, that even I as a female find what you're wearing a little bit on the offensive side for a chess tournament, because it's we had 3 guys trip and fall on the boards, and stuff, but it's, you have to play it. You really have to play it by ear and what to do. Because I would also take into account the body language from the person making the complaint. If they're kind of laughing at me, say, hey, come on, can you really do something, please? As opposed to being really upset. Right. That body language is a signal to me about how offended the person really is,
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the question. So remember, you as the tournament director, you're really the final answer in whether this is distracting or not. So so it's up to you to make a decision about this. You have to make a decision one way or the other. Someone's probably not going to like your decision, but that as a tournament director, that's what you paid to do. So hopefully paid at least to make these decisions. Anyway, let's go on to question number 5, the last question of the evening. Let me go ahead and open this for voting. So again, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Your floor TD in 9th grade section of the K-12 grade nationals. Player complains that her opponent keeps leaving the designated tables for the section. When you ask how often, the girl says almost every time after he moves, he goes over to the 12th grade section. So remember, you're the TD in the 9th grade section. You also ask, is your opponent in the room right now? And she says, yes, he's over there. Points to him in the adjacent 12th grade section. How would you handle that? Would you, 1, do nothing? If the boy's away from the board and the girl presses the clock, then it's the boy's time that will be ticking away. 2, observe the boy for a few minutes and moves before doing anything. 3, walk over to the boy and politely ask him to remain in his section, which means the 9th grade section, and inform him that his behavior has been reported as annoying. Or 3, wait near the board when the player shows up after the player's paused the clock. Penalize the boy for annoying behavior by awarding 2 minutes to the girl and strap him to his board for the rest of the game. 1, 2, 3, or 4.
I know Carol Urecki likes number 4 probably.
Right. It can be. So especially at these events, there can be not necessarily the grade section, because you can't have teammates. I guess you can have people from the same school playing in a different section, but you know, sometimes at these nationals there are other people from the same school competing in different sections, and they like to go and see them and watch their games and various things.
Yeah, I know most. I think sort of the common practice at our nationals is that the tournament directors, the section chiefs, will pretty much tell the floor TDs, if you see one of your players going over to another section and looking at a game or two, maybe once or twice in the round is okay. But if after every move they're going over there, stop them from doing it. You know, because it does become a distraction and unnecessary traffic back and forth. And plus the TDs over in the other section are wondering, like, who's this person that keeps coming over here? You know? So if you don't tell the kid to stop going over there, the other TDs are gonna probably tell him to get lost. Like, what section are you in? I'm in that one. We'll get out of here. You don't need to be over here.
Go back to your own section. Right.
Yeah.
So your answer to this one. So I'm going to go ahead and close the voting off. And what would be your answer here, Mike?
I would do number 3.
3?
Yeah, because it's clearly that he's been doing it for a while. And I just go over and say, hey, look, your games are over in this section over here. I'd appreciate it if you stay in your section. And there are some, and there has been, a complaint lodged that you keep leaving the board going over to another section. And they probably are going to say, there's nothing that stops me from doing it. And I'll just say, yeah, I am right now.
Right.
Because this is, it's okay to go look at other games in your section, but to go walk over to the other section next door, you're walking behind a bunch of other players to get over there repeatedly, and you're at another section and interfering or potentially disturbing things over there. So just stay in your section and look at the games in your section,
Yep.
So, and I would tell them, if you had only done it once or twice, I wouldn't be even talking to you, but you've been doing it every other move because I've been watching you,
Right. And just for your information, Mike, actually most people went for answer number 2 on this one, which I guess is okay. It's going to probably lead to number 3, depending on what you see at some stage. So, 2 or 3, but definitely what I see at most national scholastics is we get kids back into their own sections if that's where they should be, unless they have to cut through to go to the bathroom or something, silly like that, which can happen, of course. But anyway, so that is it for the trivia tonight, folks. Mike, thank you very much. Any last comments from you on player conduct, especially regarding player behavior?
No, I think that being decisive as a TD is important, and how you enforce the rules as a TD establishes a reputation for you, among the players. So if your rounds consistently start 5-10 minutes late, or if, quote, he lets him get away with murder at the board, those kinds of things, you don't want to have that kind of a reputation as a tournament director. Otherwise, you get elected to be the chief TD at a national event as punishment. But no, seriously, it sets a reputation for among the players, and that can have an impact on how many players come to your events.
Right. And so, Mike, wonderful having you on the show. Thank you very much for imparting your tournament director wisdom. For anyone who missed it earlier, I'm going to post in the chat link the YouTube video on the Chapter 10 online rules, the town hall that will be voted on soon. So remember, this was part 1 of a two-week series on player conduct. Next week, I'm going to be joined by Associate National Tournament Director Jim Hodina, and we're going to talk about player conduct, but in terms of using additional resources. So, in terms of cheating, solicited advice, electronic devices, various things along those lines. So please tune in next week at 9 o'clock Eastern to go over another hour or so of player conduct. Mike, thank you once again for joining us. Very much appreciated. Good luck with all your efforts on the executive board. delegates meetings, all that fun that's coming up here in August very soon. So I know you guys have a very, very busy August ahead of you. Folks, thank you very much for tuning in. Remember, you can watch this replay on the YouTube channel. I will post that link again in the chat for anyone who wants to go and look up the previous episodes. Go to the US Chess Federation YouTube channel and look for the TD videos playlist. Thanks a lot, folks. Have a good evening, and we will see you all at 9 o'clock Eastern next week. Bye for now.